Hi, my name is Amanda DiGiovanna. I'm the owner of Revolution Yoga in New York. I'm a 500-hour experienced registered yoga teacher, teaching since 2005, and I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner as well. I became a practitioner after Ayurveda helped me to heal so many facets of my own being and that of my students, friends, and family. I'm passionate about sharing this incredibly effective system and really happy to be able to be in a position to do so. It felt important to me to share everything I've learned and experienced around COVID. If I could help at least one other person experiencing this intense time we are collectively living through, it would be a deep honor. At the start of the pandemic, I began pretty voraciously reading everything I could on COVID and Ayurveda. I remember getting messages from my Italian cousins who were locked down in their homes, warning about the terror of this virus in the early winter of 2020. But it still felt distant at that point, almost dreamlike, something that couldn't touch America. Each day that passed after that became scarier and more surreal. I remember hearing sirens one day and looking out the front window across to my neighbor's house. I watched somebody who had just passed away from it with a sheet over their body getting loaded into the ambulance. The influence of this virus kept creeping in closer and closer, as I'm sure you're probably feeling currently if you're deciding to watch this video. We know people who may have passed or become very ill from COVID or have become ill ourselves. Even if you haven't caught it, psychological strain of closures, lockdowns, the polarized opinions of loved ones and strangers have probably taken a toll. Many who are close to me worked in the hospitals in New York as things were getting hit the hardest, and the stories coming out of there were just devastating. So in these situations where the material world shows its true colors, it being so deeply impermanent, changing, unstable, just crumbling around you, there are only a few options available to us. There has to be a moment of Ishvara Pranidhana. This very elementarily can mean a surrendering to what is offered to us in any given moment. There's only so much we can control as individuals, right? Once something happens, we can't change that, and we'll suffer more from not accepting the reality of something happening. So during this moment of pandemic, something that we do have control over is the self. We sort of zoom into that inner experience. On a deeper level, the inner consciousness, the present moments. On the more digestible surface, easy to understand level, my daily rituals, my preparedness, my education, and my willingness to ride the waves, right? All of that is within my control. And by working with those smaller things, we can help to create a feeling of inner stability, even when the material world is doing its thing outside of us. After 9 months of being extremely careful in a bubble, the bubble popped. My father-in-law caught it, and we were there with him unmasked. As soon as he tested positive, I knew what to do, I knew what to take, who to speak to, and I want the same for you. By the time this virus reached me, my house was fully stocked with everything we could possibly need. In this workshop, I'll simplify all of this information for you so you feel ready to presently and wholeheartedly take on whatever is presented to you in the midst of all this calamity. I'm including a little table of contents in the description of this video with timestamps so you can jump ahead to what you need when you need it. If you're ever referencing back, you can watch this video as many times as you like. You can share it with who you like, and you can reference it as much as you like. So let's talk a little bit about what is Ayurveda. Ayurveda is the sister science to yoga, where yoga is the understanding of the individual consciousness in relation to the universal consciousness. Ayurveda is the understanding of why matter flows through the universe and is arranged in our bodies and minds. What happens above also happens below. Right? Only when we can understand the rules of how matter functions, how the body and mind function, can we have enough mastery to create vibrant health and well-being. So Ayurveda is sometimes translated as the science of life. And wouldn't we all just love to have the rule book of life right in our pocket? Right? The compassion of the sages who left this information for us has pervaded the ages. And here we are, right here, right now, thousands of years later, we get to benefit from this incredible system. In this talk, I'm going to give a brief overview of some concepts in Ayurveda so you can understand the underlying mechanisms of immunity before we talk about it all through the lens of COVID-19. These topics that I'll be introducing are rich and vibrant enough to have hours-long lectures themselves, but I'm just giving you a taste. I'm always just an email away if you ever need further clarification. It's my honor to serve in that capacity. Please, as the lecture is playing, write down any questions that come up for you, and I'll be happy to help however I can. So let's start off with the Dosha Theory. Right? A dosha is often referred to in English. You might hear it in the world of COVID as cytokines, right? Everybody's talking about the cytokine storm, right? In Ayurveda, it could be translated as an imbalance or a toxin, right? So let's talk a little bit about the building blocks of life so we can understand the different doshas and how they affect our bodies. Right? So Ayurveda took some very complicated ideas and then boiled them down to simple concepts. That the world of matter that we live in is made up of the elements, which are simply different arrangements of matter, right? Earth, fire, water, air, and ether. The basics. Ayurveda teaches that within each cell of the human is a unique concentration of those elements, all given life by our consciousness. Well, I could write volumes here on the subject. My intention is to keep things really simple, okay? So earth is anything in your body that gives cohesion and protection. The flesh, the connective tissue, the fat, the protective lining of the stomach, the protection around your nerves, the protective lining of the brain. Fire is anything that is transformative, okay? So it transforms one thing into another. Our metabolism, our digestion, our intelligence. Water is anything that is fluid. Spit, semen, urine, menstrual blood, literally water is just throughout our entire system, right? Humans have so much water. Air is anything with movement, the circulation of blood throughout the system, the movement of electricity across the nerves, the movement of air moving in and out of your lungs, right? Ether is anything with space, the space in the lungs, the stomach, etc. And depending upon the concentration of each element within each individual's building blocks, they will lean towards certain temperaments, preferences, imbalances, and needs for healing. Right? So at the moment of your birth, you are born with a certain concentration of all these different elements in your cells, and they show up in all kinds of different ways. So let's chat about that. So the elements break down further, are delineated further into these categories that we call the doshas. Ether and air make up vata. Fire and water make up pitta. And then water and earth make up kapha. So if we think about vata being a combination of ether and air, it has all these qualities, ether and air, right? It's light, it's cool, it's rough, subtle, mobile, windy. You can see this in the season that vata dominates, which is the autumn, right? The air gets cool and windy. People's minds and schedules get mobile. We get busy in the fall. Even if you don't have to go back to school, there's still a sort of rushing energy. Vata-provoking food tends to have all these qualities, right? It's light and crispy and cool, like potato chips, popcorn, seltzer water, raw, crunchy, and cold vegetables. Right, the next category, which is fire and water, is pitta. It's oily, sharp, hot, light, fleshy, smelling, flowy, and liquid. We'll talk about this more in a second. We can see this in the season of summer. Right? Think about the hot days. Think about the oily skin we get in the summertime. right? The foods that would represent Pitta would be very spicy, acidic, fermented, sharp flavors like aged Parmigiano or an acidic tomato. So some apple cider vinegar has that sharpness, or a hot sauce. And lastly, we have Kapha, which is a combination of water and earth. Its attributes are unctuous, sort of like a mud, sludgy, cool, heavy, slow, smooth, clay-like, and stable. The seasons associated with an increase in this quality are late winter and spring. So we have the cooler weather. In the winter, we have heavy snow, heavy energy, right? It's hard to get up and go and do things in the winter time. We kind of all want to hibernate. Nature is slowing down outside, right? We feel a bit more grounded and stable, and we get cozy in the wintertime. And it's that feeling of Kapha. Then you get, as things start to warm up in the spring, we get mud, which is that sort of unctuous, right, and clay-like quality. We get lots of dew and rain, right? So there's that water. At this time, a heavy stew would be, very, it would feel like Kapha foods, right? Like something that's very heavy and hard to digest. Sweet, thick ice cream, steamed root veggies, oily comfort foods, right? They all have that heavier quality, which is the Kapha quality. So each dosha, right, all the qualities are listed here. I purposely made lots of graphs and things and lists so you can screenshot it and save it and reference it whenever you need to. This is a way that we can kind of identify things in the environment that have these qualities. So if we're looking for certain foods that we want to eat, we can kind of look down the list of the qualities and see, right? Okay, so I'm going to have a cucumber. A cucumber is cold. It's kind of crisp and crunchy. It's got that rougher quality. So that probably fall into maybe a little thought-provoking, right? A potato chip is very rough and crispy, right? It's mobile. If you crisp it, it goes all over the place. If we look at the Pitta column, right? So you can kind of identify the foods. Like if something is fried in oil, it's going to be more pitta-provoking. If it's physically hot, right? And then Kapha, we have sort of that like colder food, heavier qualities. So if we think about the different seasons, if you think about autumn, the leaves get very dry, your skin gets very dry, right? There's a lightness as the leaves, or mobileness, a windiness as the leaves are sort of blown throughout, the winds pick up. That's how you kind of know summer is ending and the fall is coming, because you get that wind, right? And the air feels different. Right? The air feels cool and crisp. In the summer, we have, it's obviously very hot. People start to smell fleshy in the summertime. And there's like a liquidity to it, right? With these big thunderstorms towards the end. It's just nice and humid out. Right? And then Kapha season and our winter time. Right? You can kind of identify all these different things with the different qualities of the seasons. So when it comes to people who have a higher concentration of these doshas in their cells, they tend to, you can identify it in them by seeing what their build is, right? A person with a lot of vata, with a lot of air and ether, is going to have drier skin, right? They're going to have a more mobile mind. They have lots of ideas. They tend to have a thinner frame. Their bones are not as dense as, for example, the Kapha person, because they don't have a lot of that earth quality. A Vata person, when balanced, is one of the most creative people you're going to meet. When out of balance, they're going to have a hard time getting places on time, a hard time committing to things. They may forget things a lot, right? So every constitution has a real deep beauty to it. And when out of balance, can start to kind of wreak havoc in our lives. So it really behooves us to try to get ourselves into balance. And I'll speak more about how this helps improve our immunity by having our Ayurvedic constitution balanced with what we eat, with the practices that we take on, right? That's another big lecture, but I'll just briefly touch upon it here. The Pitta person who has a lot of fire, the ability to transform, they're very intelligent, they're incisive thinkers, they're organized, right? They get things done when they're balanced. They tend to have a medium frame, their skin is warmer and can tend towards pinkness. When they're out of balance, they get very rashy, they get acne. They have a very, very sharp intelligence. But when Pitta gets too high, when the fire gets too high, it starts to burn through everything, so that intelligence turns into hypercriticism. It can turn into anger, very high Pitta. It can turn into feeling like you need to control everything because nobody's doing anything right. And it can turn into aggression, right, if the fire is too high. We'll talk more about the digestion of Pitta being too high later on too, is how you can sort of figure out what's going on inside of you. You may feel these things coming up for you, like Vata, very out of control, very out of balance, is going to start to tend towards anxiety because there's just so much energy moving in all kinds of different directions. They don't know what to do with it. Pitta can tend towards feelings of that hypercriticism, that anger, that feeling of control, right? So if we want to manage those emotions, we don't necessarily have to suppress our feelings and ourselves. We just have to think, okay, I'm feeling angry right now. What tools do I have in my toolbox to address that, right? So I'm going to do Pitta pacifying food, Pitta pacifying environment, etc., etc. Kapha tends to be a wider frame. They can very easily put on weight. So if you think about the Vata person, when they're stressed out, they get emaciated. They can't put on any weight. When the Kapha person gets stressed out, they can't lose weight. They put on so much weight. They have very dense, healthy bones. They never have any density issues, Kapha people. Their bones even feel a little bit heavier. Their skin is very smooth, cool. The Kapha people tend to have the most beautiful skin because they have oil and they have water in their skin. And they have excellent memories, right? They can remember. It may take them a little bit longer than the Pitta person to digest the information, but once they do, they remember it forever. So Kapha also tends towards feeling very easily unconditional love for people when they're balanced. They're so warm and welcoming. They take care of everyone when they're really balanced. When they are out of balance, it may tend towards diabetes, obesity, feelings of hoarding, wanting to hoard emotions, wanting to hoard stuff, wanting to hoard people, right? So they also have amazing immunity and amazing fertility, right? They have all the good stuff. The only reason they would pass early would be because of lifestyle issues, right? They can eat themselves to death. They get all kinds of lifestyle generated diseases when they're out of balance. Okay. So here are some very basic tenets of Ayurveda. As above, so below. Whatever's going on in the universe is also the same principles happen in my mind-body universe. And then like increases, like opposite decreases. This means that if I'm a Pitta constitution and I eat Pitta food, my Pitta will increase more. If I'm a Pitta constitution and I'm in the Pitta environment of the season of summer, my Pitta is going to increase more. If I'm a Pitta person in a Kapha cold environment, opposite decreases, my Pitta is going to go down. So we have the Prakruti, which is the constitution we're born with. And then due to life, the environment we're living in, anything that we imbibe through the senses, our Vikruti changes. So suddenly, when I was Pitta, I'm starting to feel all these Kapha problems if my Kapha gets too high. This is important to know for our immunity later, right? We want to return to our original state. Through yoga, we're trying to return to identifying with that inner consciousness. Through Ayurveda, we're trying to return to the original state that we were born with, because it's perfect for the dharma, the life's work that we have to do in this world, right? Everyone is unique and beautiful and perfectly suited for what they're meant for in this life. So we have to thrive to be able to do what we need to do, right? So getting ourselves back to that original constitution is going to help to eradicate disease, right? It's going to get so much healthy, Ojas, so much glow. And we'll talk about that later too. So if we have an imbalance, right, I'll have a dosha quiz link in the description of this video as well that you can follow through with. If we have an imbalance, our job is going to be to reduce the imbalance so we can get to a balanced state. So I'm not going to, in the wintertime, if I have a kapha problem, I'm not going to keep eating ice cream in the wintertime. I'm not going to keep eating cold foods and things that are just going to increase my kapha. I'm going to try to do the opposite. I'm going to take sweaty classes. I'm going to eat warming, nourishing, right? You crave that naturally when you're balanced, right? You want a nice hot cup of tea and a hot cup of soup in the wintertime. If you're craving a hot cup of soup in the summertime, there may be some kind of imbalance that's trying to continue to exist. So we have to actively maybe do some cleansing, which is another whole other lecture. We have to take on lifestyle practices that are going to bring us towards a more balanced state. So immunity, according to Ayurveda, is the working together of a myriad of different mechanisms to regulate our metabolism, our digestion, our mind, the movement of our bodies, the nervous system. It may seem like all these things are just functioning. Sometimes just really a big mess. Right? But Ayurveda lays out the framework for all of this in a really easy to understand and systematic way. Once you learn the path to immunity according to Ayurveda, it all just seems so logical and perfectly designed. This understanding will empower you to make choices in your lifestyle, diet, sadhana, which is your daily spiritual practices, that will lead you towards a calmer, healthier, more peaceful life. The gut. The whole of it starts with the gut, or the Agni, which is the digestive fire. We know in recent studies that the gut is heavily linked to the wellness of the immune system, but Ayurveda taught this for thousands of years. Here's why. When food comes in, it gets digested and broken down. Right? Waste product, or what we no longer need, that's the poo and the pee, right? It goes out one way, and then the nutrients and energy that we get from the food goes another way. It gets sent out to the body where it is needed. We can think of digestion as the wellspring that feeds and nourishes every other tissue in the body. I'm a gardener and an herbalist, so I often think in plant analogies. So think about, or imagine, there are 7 potted plants sitting on a windowsill. And I have one watering can with a certain capacity that I water them with every day. If I don't fill up my watering can with enough water, and I water the 7 plants in the same order every day, then the last plants in the sequence won't get the water they need. So what do you think will happen to these plants? They start to wither. They get diseased. They can't function properly, and eventually may completely cease to be. The tissues in our bodies that we grow from our digestion are similar in that if they don't get enough nourishment, they start to create dysfunction. They get depleted, they wither. So it's not just bad for that tissue, but whatever is further down the row will also start to become depleted and dysfunction. Okay, so it's our best interest to get our digestion really healthy and under control. And what does healthy digestion mean? You know you're watching an Ayurveda lecture, you know you're going to talk about poop. So we look at waste product to see what's going on in the tissues. And the cool thing is every tissue has a waste product, right? The hair and the nails are actually the waste product of the bones. So anyway, the list goes on, and we'll touch upon that later, but let's focus on poop for a second. There are a few different types of digestion that we will see and be able to understand better what's going on in the gut. So the first one is Visham Agni. This is irregular digestion or a vata imbalance. This is how you can tell if you have a vata imbalance. Sometimes you have a good poo. Sometimes you're constipated and farting. Sometimes you have diarrhea or loose stool. This is like having a broken blender, right? The blender in your digestion is broken. Have anyone got that Ninja, right? I have my fancy Ninja, and it's so disappointing when it's not working right. Sometimes it blends too high and everything explodes out the top. Sometimes it's working erratically, and then you get big chunks of food in your smoothie, or you're trying to make your raw soup, but it's not heating up properly because it's not going fast enough. Right? I know you health junkies out there know what I'm talking about. So the same is with Visham Agni. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's very constipated, sometimes it's too loose. So it's all over the place. That's sort of the nature of Vata. It's a mischief maker. Okay, the next type of digestion that we can look at is Tikshna Agni. This is sharp digestion or a pitta imbalance. This is how you know your pitta is out of control. As soon as you eat, you have to get up and go to the bathroom, which is usually an inflammatory reaction. But often people who do this say, no, I have really good digestion. I go to the bathroom every day, very regularly, all the time. But if it's coming out very loose or explosive, it's not actually healthy digestion. My Ayurvedic teacher explained it to me like this. She said, when you cook rice, if you put the heat on too high, which is pitta fire, right? If you put the heat on too high, all the water's going to evaporate and your rice is still hard and not cooked. Now, that's what happens in the cooking of your digestion. You'll be cooking the food on so high that you think you have good digestion, but you start having all kinds of nutritional deficiencies. Even though you eat all the time, you take the vitamins, it's all about being able to properly absorb the food, right? If you can't absorb the nutrients because they're not properly digested, they actually cause disease. It causes ama, which translates to toxic waste. And then that gets pushed out to your tissues, and it makes dysfunction in your tissues, right? So we have to be really mindful of how we're eating to keep our digestive fire nice and healthy. So the next is Manda Agni. And this indicates that there is a kapha imbalance. It's very, very slow. You eat a meal and you feel stuffed for hours. You put on weight really, really fast, and you feel exhausted after a meal. You don't poop for days. I know some people who had such an issue with this, they wouldn't poop for a whole week. And that's not healthy, right? That's not going to keep you well. Got to get rid of the waste product, right? Once they do poo, it's very laborious and it's hard to get out. The stool is very sticky. So it's as though the fire is too low. It cannot cook the food, right? The fire can be too high and not cook the food properly. The fire can be too low and not cook the food properly. We're tending to the Agni, the digestive fire, every time we eat. Every time we choose a lifestyle practice, we choose to put something in our mouth, every single choice we make starts to determine or move the digestion in the direction that it's meant to go, or that it's going to go. We're looking for perfectly tending the fire. We don't want it too hot. When you think about a campfire, you make that campfire too hot, all the wood burns away, it's gone very quickly. If you make the campfire too low, right, it's going to just peter out. The fire is going to peter out. So we have to tend it really mindfully. And that's when we come to Sama Agni. This is when you have no issues. You eat a meal and you feel comfortable. You don't feel any bloating. There's no gas. There's no reflux or hyperacidity or lethargy, right? This kind of gives you the good feels after you eat a meal, like that feeling after you take a nice yoga class, right? You get the good feelings after. And then we have 1 or 2 daily bowel movements. You make a nice log, right? It's easy, it comes out, it's a good shape, right? It's Sama Agni, that's what we're going for. And what it means when we're having that kind of digestion is that we're going to enjoy really good immunity. We're going to build nice, healthy tissues down the line, and we're going to feel strong, right? You'll notice that someone has really radiant skin, really bright, expressive eyes. And that's how you know the Agni is really healthy. Okay, let's get into the next. So the first part is the Agni. Okay, we're digesting the food, we're absorbing the food and assimilating the food. And then where do the nutrients go? They go out into the tissues, the dhatus. So it happens in a particular order. Okay, we start with plasma rasa, rasa dhatu, which is plasma. And we'll go through each of these one by one so you have a deeper understanding. Blood, which is rakta dhatu, is fed from the plasma, from the rasa dhatu. Okay, this is the plants on the windowsill. Next comes the muscle or mamsa dhatu. After that comes the fat, medas dhatu. After that is the bone, ashti dhatu. After that is the nerves and marrow, manja dhatu. And then after that is the reproductive tissue, shukra dhatu. Think about how many people have reproductive issues in modern Western culture when also the digestion is awful in modern Western culture because the food is terrible in modern Western cultures, right? You get involved in Ayurveda, in yoga, and people who have been, I personally know many people who have been told they will never have children and suddenly they're getting pregnant by accident, and it's not really so sudden because they're actually creating healthier tissues, healthier eggs, healthier sperms, right? They require a lot of energy to grow. Even just taking vitamins all the time sometimes won't do it if you're not digesting them and assimilating them, absorbing them, right? Sending them out properly. So we really have to be mindful of the digestion. Let's go through each one so you can understand a little bit better. So we're going to have plasma is the first one. What is it? Plasma is the nutritive fluid that feeds everything else in your body. It is regulated with water. It's kind of a kapha thing, the rasa. It feeds all the tissues. It regulates your electrolyte balance. It's responsible for feeding the heart, the lymph, the blood, the mucus, the membranes. If it's depleted, you're going to have inflamed and dry mucous membranes, right? You might have inflammation in your gums too. Okay, so if the pitta digestion is too high, right, it's going to cause a problem. If there's a lot of vata, you're not going to have enough water, fluid, kapha. If it's too moist, too much milk, right? If you have a lot of period blood, you know that there's an issue with this one. And we can heal it, making sure that we have proper digestive fire and plenty of liquids. Lots of water. Okay, Rakta, the next one, is your blood. It's the transporter of your nutrients and oxygen, right? And obviously it's built upon plasma. This is responsible for our tendons, feeding our tendons eventually and our level of energy. This is regulated by fire, pitta. It's responsible for red blood cells, tendons, bile, energy, passion. It comes through the liver. Look, everything is connected and it's all linked together, right? If we get imbalanced here, it could be because vata is too high, which causes a decrease in our ability to make the blood. The light nature of vata can also, reduce the cell count. The cold nature gives us issue with the fire carrying capacity. So if it's depleted, the body will feel cold and fatigued all the time. These are just ways that you can kind of think to yourself, oh, this is, I have a deficiency here. You might have difficulty processing and understanding new information as well. So if you're vata, you're going to have a reduced red blood count, gray pale skin. If you're pitta imbalanced here, you're going to feel hot. You're going to be sweating all the time. You have red skin and rashes, red eyes, loose stool. Frequent urination, connective tissue disorder, autoimmune, inflammation, tendinitis. So all these things are indications that there's an imbalance, right? That we can try to work through fixing the digestion. We heal it by balancing the fire in the body and the mind based upon the constitution, so reducing pitta, or increasing pitta depending upon what you need. Vata people, the body becomes both cold and fatigued. So we're going to use activities that would reduce. Okay, so making sure you have a regular eating habit. Don't skip meals. That causes problems with absorption and your nutrition. The next is the muscle and skin, which is mamsa. So the blood transports the nutrients and the oxygen. Rakta is built upon plasma, and then it's responsible for building our tendons. All right, so if it's balanced, then earth will be converted to muscle that is healthy and capable of large amounts of work without injury. So if you're getting injuries, if you have tendinitis, if you have inflammation, right, if you feel weak in your muscles, then there's actually an issue with how that tissue is being built. Right? They're all little clues for us to go into our toolbox and figure out what we need to do to become balanced. So we can tell it's depleted if the tissue is very hard and inflexible. This is going to be kapha issues. The skin and the ligaments of the body start to become hard and tight, right? No more flexibility. So you might hear people, especially in the yoga world, who say, wow, once I changed my diet, suddenly my flexibility increased like crazy. That's a real thing, and it happens from having proper tissue formation. So for Pitta, the skin and ligaments get thinner, and they get prone to inflammation and injury. They have pain, around the tissue, right? So surrounding the pain, it'll feel warm, and it may be red. Vata has thin, weak tissues, prone to injury, timidity, emotional fragility, joint issues, low pain threshold, and high pain sensitivity. All this stuff is indicating something is depleted here. Let's see. So yeah, we can go through all of this. We heal it by eating earth-building foods. That's kapha increasing foods. And make sure we can digest properly. Your exercise and asana should create a healthier muscle metabolism, right? We shouldn't be working out to the point where our muscles fail as in like start degrading. And like I have a friend, oh my gosh, he was exercising so much, he got rhabdo and he ended up in the hospital. He was pissing blood. It was like, right? That's like too extreme. We have to make sure that we find balance in everything that we do. And this helps to feed the tissues, the fluid, the electrolyte balance, heart, lymph, blood, muscles, mucous membranes, right? So the fat, which is meda, the fatty tissues of the body, are the concentrated waters of the body. This is sebum. If you're having a lot of sebum, you have to go to the dermatologist and deal with that. There is actually the underlying issue that it should be balanced, right? If the overproduction is an issue, underproduction is an issue. This is our fat tissue. It's nourishing, stabilizing, and protective against excessive air, ether, and fire. If you have a lot of fat tissue, you can't digest foods that have a lot of kapha. These are how to tell if you're having issues here. The channels in the body are clogged. Your body feels stagnant. You have bad circulation. Non-attachment feels unattainable to you. The mind gets rigid. The digestion is sluggish. Right? If we can really look at that poop, it could tell us where we're deficient so we can do the opposite to try and balance. All right, pitta and water element get burned up too quickly, which diminishes the fat. And this can make us prone to injury too. It's not bad to have some fat. Fat is pretty good. It's nourishing and protective. It's not all bad. Fat gets a really bad rap in our culture. So the causes of imbalance can be kapha can overproduce tissue. Pitta can burn it away, and the quality of the tissue is not very good. The waste products are sweat and sebum, so if you have pretty stinky sweat and overproduction of sebum, right, those are ways to know. And it's pretty much the same for everything. You want to eat a healthy, balanced meal and digest your food good. So you don't have to remember all this. You just have to get your digestion healthy. Okay, the next is bone, elements of air and earth. When it's low, Asti Dhatu is produced in excess. So the tissue is denser. So Kapha, with lower fire, produces thicker and denser bones. Pitta has a higher Agni. They produce bones that are not as dense, but they're more metabolically active. Right? So this can actually lead to narrowing and weakness in the bones as well as inflammation. And then Vata is variable. They go in all directions. So they actually produce less Asti Dhatu, less bones, which means that they're of thinner and poorer quality and it can be more fragile. So those with osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, they tend to have Vata imbalance. This is responsible for our bone, hair, nails, and teeth. So all these are considered waste products. So if you're having a problem with your teeth and you're getting a lot of cavities, you're having deficiency in this tissue. You have to go back along the line and make sure that you heal and you start to get better nutrients inside of you. So the teeth of someone with the pitta affecting this will be yellow. The vata will be gray. Too much pitta, also the hair will start to gray quicker with too much pitta. I always think about my great-grandmother was legendary. They say she didn't have any white hair on her head when she passed away in her 90s. And I just think about, she was living in such a pure environment. She was living with the seasons. She lived in Italy many a time ago, right? They rode horses. They didn't have cars. It was very close to nature. So the further we get away from nature, the more prone we are towards imbalances. And we kind of have to make just a little bit extra effort to replicate what nature would give us. Okay. The bone marrow. That's our air and water elements. Also the nervous system here. So if you're having nerve issues, there's something going on with the development of this. You want to look at what comes out of your eye in the morning. That's the waste, right? The crust, eye crust. Also the color of your sclera and the general luminosity of the eyes can tell you what's going on in the bone marrow. It's very interesting. So Vata would have very dry and crusty eye gunk and a dark gray sclera. It makes the eyes sort of look vacant. They lack attention and real interest, the eyes. And then Kapha, it would be very oily gunk and a dull white sclera and a decrease in luminosity. This is when it's not balanced. The eyes will appear kind of cloudy and dull. There's interest, but the processing is so slow. They have they're sort of and then they're aware. Pitta, it will be yellow eye gunk and yellow sclera. Pitta people tend to have really sharp eyes generally, and they'll be very interested in you and what you're saying. Deeply engaged and maybe a little too highly focused when it's out of balance. And the last one is the reproductive tissues or shukra. This is, let's see, if we're exhausted, depleted, poor diet, excessive stress, you're going to have issues here, right? All the fats, the nutrients, everything that comes in that we need to build sex hormones and regulate the reproductive tissues will get used up by stress hormones. Okay, so if you're having issues here, we have to find ways to reduce stress. Meditation, pranayama. There are so many techniques in our tradition that help with stress mitigation. Shut off Facebook. Stop looking at social media. Turn off the news for a week. Just see if you can be in your present state and try to mitigate stress. So this one has to do with the quality of the sperm and the quality of the ovum or the eggs. Healthy shukra has a brightness, a confidence with eyes and skin that seems to radiate light. So they look bright and beautiful and healthy and well. We can heal this by eating a lot of sattvic foods. Later on in this lecture, I have lists that you can screenshot of the different sattvic foods that you can do, or that you can eat. So you want to consume a lot of water, eat those nourishing foods, the right kind of milk, soaked nuts, ghee, that all helps. So this is an interesting. Men can look at their ejaculate to see how they're imbalanced, and women can look at their menstrual blood. So in men, the ejaculate color, the volume, the sperm count, and in women, the smell, the look of it. So if your vata is not well, you're going to have low sperm count and low motility. Right? If your vata is vitiated, that's what they call it. Issues with formation of the egg in women and its response to the hormones that trigger development and ovulation. There's so much infertility in Ayurveda. It's wonderful. It's wonderful if you want to create a really healthy child down the road, then we want to consider all of these things too. Again, a whole other lecture. So gray ejaculate would mean that vata is very high. If you're menstruating in a very irregular way, sometimes it's 29 days, sometimes it's 40 days, sometimes it's 23 days, right? In between, something's going on with vata. And ovulatory disorders are vata related. So we want to work on reducing the vata to eliminate those issues if we can. Some people have genetic things where you can't, but it's worth looking into. Kapha, the quantity of shukra increases the sperm, but it's poor quality. So they have a lot of ejaculate, but it's not so good. The sperm count will be normal or increased, and the motility of those sperms are decreased. The next, in women, there may be an obstruction to the development of the ovum or its release. This is one cause of ovarian cysts. Okay, so if you're dealing with cysts, if you're dealing with PCOS, you're having an issue in the reproductive, right? There are so many books about this out that aren't even Ayurvedic related about healing PCOS, and a lot of it has to do with diet and lifestyle. And Ayurveda also accounts for that. Through diet and lifestyle, you can heal those things. And herbal regimen. So, the ejaculate is pale white, and there's a long mucus discharge in the menstrual flow. So if you're having sort of mucusy stuck together, something's going on with kapha. The last is a low sperm count in men with inflammation in the ovaries and the testes and other tissues associated, yellow ejaculate, and a very intense menstrual flow that hurts a lot. Right? So Ayurveda teaches that the menstrual flow should, PMS shouldn't be so intense. You shouldn't feel like you're going crazy inside. You shouldn't have that much pain. When you're very, very balanced in the reproductive, in the shukra, the periods come and you just feel a little tired. And that's the extent of it. The blood will look, you won't have any clots. The blood will look just red. Nothing crazy, right? So if you're having issues in any of these places, it's an indication we have to fix the diet. And I'm going through this because you can hear you have to fix your diet from like a million different doctors and nutritionists and people. But for myself, if I know the underlying reason why I have to do it, if I'm seeing some kind of list of problems that I might be experiencing myself and realizing, oh, all I have to do is change my diet and that will change and I won't have to deal with this issue anymore, that's a wonderful thing to know, and it's definitely motivating and empowering. So that's why I'm going through this list with all of you. So the last bit of it, from the shukra, the reproductive, comes whatever's left over now of the nutrients becomes ojas. We're on to immunity. We've gotten to the immunity portion of the lecture. So ojas takes 5, each channel or each dhatu tissue takes 5 to 7 days to get what it needs. So that means that the food that you eat on day 1 will take 35 to 49 days to build the final tissue, which is your dhatu. Sometimes in Ayurveda, we skip steps. So we'll use transdermal oils, and you don't have to digest that through your belly. You just digest it through your skin, and you can get the benefits quicker. That's a whole other topic. But only the finest, most refined essence becomes ojas, or glow. it's sometimes called. It consists of whatever nutrients are left over after building all the other tissues. This is our immunity. So from Charaka, when we have low ojas, a person's complexion doesn't glow. They feel fearful, weak, worried. The mind will be turbulent and the body rough and thin. That's from the Charaka Samhita. So the beneficial qualities of ojas is seen through the luster of the eyes, the strength of the body, resistance to disease, efficient digestion, potent fertility, and lucidity of the mind. There's another little sweet analogy here. As bees collect honey from the fruits and flowers, similarly, ojas is collected in the body by the actions, qualities, habits, and diet of the human being. Ojas is the basic capacity of the immune system, the ability of the body to protect itself against external pathogens. It provides endurance, resistance, and strength to ward off disease. From the ojas comes the tejas, so we're still going along that line. At the level of the cells, tejas is cellular intelligence. So the cells know what to do, right? They come together, they build a heart. Your heart cells know how to pump blood. You don't have to tell them what to do. They have a certain innate intelligence. The cells know how to digest. They know how to transform. They know how to use metabolism. It's incredible how intelligent our whole system is. So this having healthy tejas promotes intelligence, reason, a passion to learn, focus, self-discipline, perception, and mental clarity. It is the heat and light energy of ojas that has an oil quality, oily, that sustains it. The way that ghee can sustain the flame of a candle. Digestion and metabolism are regulated. They're tejas. And sometimes it's related to the hormones even that regulate our cellular metabolism. Ojas, everything has a subtle form. Ojas is subtle form. Ojas is the subtle form of kapha. Tejas is the subtle form of pitta. So I wanted to explain in the beginning what each thing was so you can have a bit of an understanding that it pervades every part of our being, the doshas. So tejas is the immune system, which is able to burn and destroy toxins when activated. It is the cause for a rise in temperature that the body produces in fever to destroy the pathogens which attack it. Tejas is our ability to overcome acute diseases, which are generally infectious in nature. The last bit is prana. The energy that comes from ojas after it has been transformed into tejas. This is where our feeling of strength comes from. Prana is the life force that powers and sustains all life. Prana maintains harmony between the body and the mind. When prana flows through the body, it regulates all parts of our body's functioning. People don't realize that. Electricity has to move through the nervous system to get your arm to flail, to get your eyes to blink, to get you to breathe, to poop, right? All of it is through prana of, sometimes it's called vatu or the vayus, vata or the vayus. So it's the airs of the body. And again, that's a whole other lecture, but I'm just going to touch upon it really quick before we move on. So the vayus, there are a couple. Okay, prana vayu is near the heart chakra, has to do with our respiratory and circulatory function, right? The inhale, exhale, and the circulation beyond that. Apana has to do, is located near the root chakra, so it's from the belly down towards the legs. It's responsible for elimination, so pooping, menstruating, ejaculating, right? All that is, we need the prana to be moving properly. Samana is the solar plexus or the digestion, the gut, the Agni that we've been talking about so much today. And then we have Vyana, which is the sacral chakra, which is located near, it's really, Vyana I think of as throughout the entire body, right? So you have movement everywhere. Udana, which connects the super physical plane with the physical plane, I've read, is Udana, but it's it's the connection between our inner and outer world. So we can think of it as the throat of the sound moving in and out. Naga, as we get into the Supra, they're the sort of more subtle ones. We have Naga, which is erucation, Korma, which is opening the eyes, Krikara, which is hunger and thirst, Devadatta, which is yawning, Dhananjay, which is hiccups or coughs, and this is the subtle form of Vata. Okay, so we have Ojas, which is Kapha, Tejas, which is Pitta, and then we have Prana, which is Vata. So let's move on. Tejas. Oh, sorry, Prana is the long-term activation of the immune function when the body is suffering from a chronic disease. It's the adaptability of the immune system and sustains all long-term healing processes. So just ignore that header. It's Prana. Okay. We're talking a lot about a proper diet because it fixes everything, right? If you have a proper diet, you do your yoga asana, your physical practice in yoga, you meditate, you do pranayama, breathwork practices to move the prana, you're going to feel very good and your immunity is going to really, really be good. When I caught COVID, it was interesting to see how it affected the different people in the house. I have, since COVID, right at my studio, a group of us every morning, meet on Zoom, we meditate together, we read the text, we do tons of pranayama. So I was doing that religiously and I was eating a very healthy diet because I was stuck in my house. What else am I going to do? I'm cooking all these, I'm cooking everything from scratch. I'm eating a lot of Ayurvedic food and I'm doing my asana practice. So my immunity was very, very strong when I caught it and I didn't have any symptoms. And this is what Ayurveda teaches. I'll get into that later about the Ayurvedic view of COVID. It's hitting people in different ways. And Ayurveda feels that they have the explanation of the reason why that's happening. So, other people in my household got very, very ill for a long time, right? It's like the difference between taking the herbs and not taking the herbs too. We have all these Rasayana herbs in Ayurveda that help to create such a deep, healthful balance in our system. So in your protocol for, getting ready, making yourself prepared, it's going to have to do with taking Rasayana herbs, cleansing yourself, eating a proper diet, having proper lifestyle choices, okay? The diet should be warm, fresh, and easy to digest. Warm, not cold, old foods. Right? Fresh means, in Ayurveda, if something's left over longer than 2 hours, it actually starts to create gases and ferments, and it's not great for you to eat. So, try to portion where you're cooking food fresh and eating it fresh. It should be easy to digest. So I'll give you the chart, but you should make sure you're eating proper food combinations. That's going to make your food easier to digest. If you eat two different things that are not compatible, your belly's going to have a really hard time digesting that food, and it's going to cause all kinds of undigested ama or toxic waste. Sattvic, which is anything that's in the mode of balance or goodness. So I'm going to have lists. And you want to make sure it's appropriate for your constitution. If you have, I'm reading through all this stuff. If you're finding that you are identifying with the imbalanced things, you can see an Ayurvedic practitioner. You can get yourself back towards a state of balance. You want to do it now and make sure that your immunity is nice and strong. Okay, sattvic foods are clean and pure, which means chemical free. All right, try not to eat chemicals. Your body can't recognize them. It doesn't know what to do with them. It wreaks havoc. Some of them have biomimicry, right? So they make your body think it's some other hormone, and then it messes up the balance of everything. So wherever you can, try to get organic food. I know the argument against that, the protest is often, well, I can't afford organic food. Okay, go get some seeds, get a pot of soil or a vacant lot in your neighborhood or your front yard or your backyard and try to grow your own organic food. It's super liberating and it's free. And then you save the seeds that come from your plants and you can have free organic food. You can even grow food inside. right? They sell little hydroponic things now. So there's a lot you can do to make sure that your food is as clean as possible. That's going to give your immune system the best start. You want to make sure the food is vital, energy giving, and fresh. So if I go into my backyard and I pick the leaf, it's got a lot of prana in it. It's got a lot of life force. If I eat that, I'm going to get that life force. If I pick a leaf and I put it in a truck and I drive it to another country, or I put it in a plane and I send it to another country and it's very, very, very far away, slowly but surely all the prana leaves. Same goes for frozen foods, canned foods, tin foods, things like that. The older the food is, the less prana it has, the less energy giving it is. So in the wintertime, it's not practical to only eat fresh foods if you're just, eating locally, but see what you can do, right? Just do your best. In the kapha, in time of kapha, which is winter, we have a little more bolstered, a little bit more against eating fermented foods. Your immunity should be a little bit better if you don't have too much kapha. Right? So we want to be conscious and aware while we're cooking our food. They say whatever consciousness you had at the moment of cooking the food, it gets imbibed as people eat it. So making sure that sometimes I just chant to myself in my head, or I'll do mantra repetition while I'm cooking, and I know that that's what's being imbued into my food. I'm not letting my mind wander into a million different places where it can sort of go awry. We want the things that we manifest in the material world to have sort of a beautiful consciousness behind them, and it's going to make them more easily absorbable. Same as when you're eating the food, where's your mind, right? If your mind is watching the news and it's immersed in stress, or it's scrolling on your feed and it's immersed in stress, then your gut is working on digesting those stress hormones, and it's going to have a harder time digesting your food. Okay, so we want to really be conscious around eating and cooking. We prepare the foods wisely. That's according to Ayurvedic tradition. You want to make sure your beans and grains are soaked and properly fermented before you eat them. Otherwise, it actually leaches nutrients away from your bloodstream. You want to make sure you're eating for your constitution, right? The food that I eat is my food. That can be my medicine, can be someone else's poison, because they're not the same constitution as me. So you want to prepare food wisely. So know what your constitution is. Know what the dosha of the food is. And we also make sure we have all the flavors in a given meal. It helps to make you feel nourished afterwards and satiated. Only eat when you're hungry. Make sure you leave 1/4 of your stomach empty. Excuse me. Avoid excess sour flavors, excess salt, bitter. You don't want to have too much oil when you're cooking, or too much spice, right? If you have like a ton of spicy foods, a ton of heat, it's gonna give you a tummy ache. It's gonna wreak havoc on your digestion. We want to avoid unripe vegetables and fruits. We want to avoid too much fermented food. We avoid leftovers and too much alcohol, which the body recognizes as a poison and has to work on healing from, imbibing. The thing is, there are some Ayurvedic wines, right? There are some Ayurvedic formulas. It's not, you should never, ever in Ayurveda. It's never, you should never. It's try. Try to integrate a little thing here and there and see how you feel afterwards. And if you're feeling better, you're going to get the empowered feeling that you should continue on the path. And maybe you'll try another little thing and another little thing, and slowly but surely, everything will transition. If you're going to have alcohol, the idea is you should have prepared your body to intake it, is the idea. A lot of people aren't doing that. I don't know, do you make sure that your whole body is completely balanced before you take an alcohol? Maybe not, maybe you do, but the idea is that we should try to limit it if we are trying to boost our immunity. Okay, more foods that are sattvic and balanced: raw, cold pressed olive oil, red palm oil, sesame, flax oils, fruits. If you're going to have dairy, you have to have it with wisdom. Make sure you know where your dairy is coming from. You want milk from loved, pastured cows where they don't take their baby away. It's called ahimsa milk. This is the kind of milk you get traditionally in India, right? And in older times, they revere the cows. So the cows that are not raised in this way produce milk that is full of ama, toxic waste, and will make you very, very sick, if that's another reason that you need, other than the cows being treated nicely, right? We want to really be mindful of what we are imbibing, right? The consciousness of the food comes in. Same goes for breast milk, right? Human breast milk can actually, it is great. It's always great. But some of it is actually better because it's coming from a body that has less imbalances. And that helps to nourish the baby, right? Sometimes if the baby has colic or the baby has, issues with the digestion, that gas, all that can be led back to the food that they're eating. So you can have very pitta milk, you could have very vata milk, very kapha milk. So it's the same with the cows. We want to make sure that the cows are nice and healthy and they're in their natural habitat eating grass, not corn and all kinds of other crazy things that they're giving these poor cows, right? They need to be in the sunshine, and then they'll be making nice healthy milk. And then we spice the milk and we cook the milk with water to make it even more digestible for us. If you have lactose intolerance, that's fine. Just do coconut milk or almond milk instead. Make sure it's organic and make sure there's no crazy fillers in it. Okay, yogurt and cheese, that's fresh and made on the same day that you're eating it. Very, very old yogurt is not going to be so good. It's very highly fermented, and hard cheeses, which are very tasty and yummy. And again, you can partake of things in a little bit once you're balanced, but they are harder to digest because of the acidity of them. Ghee is so healthy, amazing for you. It's clarified butter. Sprouted and roasted whole grains. Sprouted means soaked overnight. And that makes them more easily digestible. It takes the phytic acid away that would actually pull the nutrients away from your bones and teeth. If you soak them, it actually makes everything bioavailable to you to digest more easily. Mung beans are just a panacea of amazingness. They have all the nutrients. Mung beans are wonderful. Incorporate them into your diet. Sprouted mung beans or khichdi, which is a sort of soup with grains and the beans and vegetables. It's so healthy and so good for you. Honey and jaggery, especially during COVID times, if you get some honey that's made from manuka or neem, that tends to be really helpful to bolster your immune system. Then jaggery is a sweetener that you can find in any Indian market or online. And it's got so much iron and nutrients in it, and it gives you that nice, sweet, sugary flavor. Basil is good. Coriander, cardamom, Ceylon cinnamon. Regular cinnamon is toxic. Don't get that. Make sure it's Ceylon. Cumin, fennel, fenugreek, ginger, turmeric, and soma salt. All these things we can cook with. It'll make very, very healthy food. You'll feel very good after you eat. Always activate your nuts in water overnight. But hemp seeds, coconut, pine nuts, walnuts, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds. These are all sattvic foods. Okay, so the next is our food combinations. What you need to digest one food may be the opposite enzyme that you need to digest another food. They interfere and you get all kinds of problems. I'm going to have you just screenshot that, print it out, put it on your fridge. Right? If you follow this list, it's going to help with all kinds of digestive problems. And if you need recommendations or anything, here for you guys. There's a lot of really beautiful cookbooks, Ayurvedic cookbooks out there. I love Divya Alter's book. I love Vasant Lad's cookbook. There's really nice Ayurvedic cookbooks that you can follow along, and it's pretty easy when you're eating vegetarian to do food combinations. I also hear about people who just I stopped having dairy altogether and I don't have any digestive issues anymore. Sometimes the reason that they're getting such bad digestive issues is because they're eating the dairy with all kinds of things that they shouldn't be, like fruits and meat, and you have to be mindful of the combinations of the food and you'll digest so much better and you'll make better tissues. I find sometimes, I'm such a foodie, I'll be eating a modern diet, but I just honor the food combinations and I get creative, if I want to have a taco, and I'm not supposed to have, the cucumbers in the taco with the lemon juice or something, I'll just replace it. Or if I want to have some kind of like creamy thing, but I don't want to use dairy, I could always make like a cashew cream or an almond cream or coconut cream or something like that. So you can get really creative with your cooking. Okay, the last bit is integrating yoga. Yoga helps to open up all the marmani, all the acupressure points in your body. It opens up the shrotas, the channels. Asana is really healthy for you. Meditation helps to regulate your mental state and your nervous system. It's wonderful to do meditation daily. Pranayama breathwork practices are also incredible for your immune system. They help to keep your lungs healthy too, especially with COVID attacking people's lungs, which I'll explain in a minute. We want to make sure the lungs are really strong. Okay, so Ayurveda's view on pandemics. The first documentation of pandemic disease is clearly mentioned by Charaka in Vimanasthana under Janapadodvasva Vyadi. Pandemics follow a fairly clear path. Now, remember, this was documented thousands of years ago, yet the path sounds perfectly familiar. So, adharmic activities can cause or contribute to pandemics. Any activity is adharmic when it contributes to the destruction of the sustaining principles of life and nature. This is very apparent with the effects of global warming and generally the effect humans have had on the earth. So air is the first one. Air pollution, it was so bad that everybody was locked at home, right, and not using their vehicles, and the hole in the ozone layer healed itself. Like, that's how bad the air was. It was really, the air was very polluted in a lot of places in the world. Water, we have acidification of the ocean, plastic pollution, contamination of waterways, all very apparent. Even in the place where I live, you can't drink the water out of the sink because it has this crazy cancer-causing. You should hear the women in the moms groups trying to figure out how to filter the water so they can just take a shower. It's wild what we've done. Land. So rapid urbanization and construction with not so eco-friendly materials, the exploitation of natural resources, the cutting down of massive swaths of forest and jungles to make way for more human habitat displaces animals, right? And that can lead to pandemics. And widespread pesticide use, industrial farming practices, all of this have led to imbalances in nature. These adharmic activities, which, we have people marching and fighting over in regards to the climate crisis. We're all watching happen in our lifetime. They all vitiate and disturb the balancing forces of nature. So this gives rise to aggravated air currents, which we can see happening with mass floodings, extreme weather, wildfires, cyclones, which were actually warning signs thousands of years ago that a pandemic was coming. Additionally, these things affect our food that we grow as it reduces the nutritive value, leading to undernourishment in humans. And this is actually something people have been talking about that, they knew about thousands of years ago, but people, it's a big epiphany all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden everyone's saying, oh, it's this recent phenomena that all this agriculture, the food doesn't have as many nutrients anymore, right? This has a lot to do with, it's not just industrialized agriculture, but that is a huge problem because it's destroying the land. But it's also this messing up of the airs. So the vitiation of the air currents, the seasons being off. Where I live in zone 7, but it's been acting like I'm way more south. Things have been warmer. We have less snow. I've been able to grow stuff that I don't have to dig up my dahlias. That's like a weird thing for where I live. It's definitely changed, right? The seasons are off. And I don't know if you feel that way in where you live too. So all of this, the less nutritious food, the disturbance of the land and water, it simultaneously induces a vitiation of our human doshas, which we're calling the cytokines in English, which causes mass susceptibility of the same illness. So when your metabolism, your Agni Mandya, gets sluggish because of poor digestive fire, it's the perfect equation for infections like COVID-19 to spread like wildfire throughout the population. So here's a little chart. Put my face over here for you to understand. Right, we have the abuse of the resources, the land, air, the season, everything's all messed up. We have this extreme cold, heat, unseasonal rains happening. Right, and then that leads to the doshas, right, in humans becoming a problem. And contributing as well is the poor diet and lifestyle of people, and then the quality of the poor food, right, not having that much nutrient. This produces toxic waste because it makes our digestion harder, and then we have the development of disease. What is COVID-19? They call it corona because it kind of looks like a crown. So we have these proteins, these spike proteins that attach themselves onto ACE2 receptors. So this is why it's sort of coming out in places that are very rich with ACE2 receptors, like in the lungs, the pulmonary issues people are getting afterwards, the vascular issues people are getting afterwards. It all has to do with this ACE2 receptor. Right? The virus latches on and it enters the cell, and then we're seeing that it's really hard to get it out of some people, whereas other people are fighting it off very easily. So let me make sure my computer's plugged in. All right. So if we want the immune system to work properly, we have to make sure that it's strong and it's not working hard in other places, right? If we're more balanced, then it's going to be the T cells are going to be able to really wake up and fight what's going on. Okay. What else to say about that? Pretty much covers the coronavirus. Contagious. People are most contagious the first 3 days of infection when there are often no symptoms. Many stop being infectious after day 10, but some outliers lean towards day 19 and even rarer further than that. They're still studying it. They're still studying all of this, okay? So make sure you do your research. Make sure you speak to your doctor before you take on any of the stuff, right? Your doctor is probably very up to date with everything going on. The onset of symptoms. Most people see symptoms happening at day 2 to 5 of exposure, but symptoms can start anywhere between 2 to 14 days after exposure. So even if you feel fine on day 13, day 14, you might start getting symptoms. The symptoms being fever, fatigue, dry cough, loss of appetite, body aches, shortness of breath, mucus or phlegm, sore throat. Just so you know what to expect if you do get infected. This is considered, we've moved past pandemic into endemic, which means that most people are likely to catch coronavirus if you aren't getting the vaccine or before you're able to get access to the vaccine. Which is part of the reason why I'm putting this out, just for anybody who needs a little extra support. Sore throat, headache, chills, sometimes with shaking, loss of smell or taste, congestion and runny nose, nausea, vomiting, digestive issues, diarrhea, trouble breathing, constant pain or pressure in the chest, bluish lips or face, go to the hospital if that's the case, and sudden confusion, go to the hospital. So if any of this stuff is coming up, we can just go get tested to be sure, make sure that we're not infecting anybody else. So the testing, it's recommended to get a PCR test, which is a swab that they put way up your nose, or now they finally developed a saliva test that you can get. Seems a lot less invasive. So if you do test positive, you want to try to get it around day 2 to 5, right? That's going to be your most accurate positive result. Around day 5. And then it's going to take around 2 to 5 days to get the results back. Refrain from being around other people when you're waiting for your test results. If you test positive, it is recommended to quarantine at least 10 days after. People are still testing positive for up to 90 days after they have recovered. So it isn't recommended to keep testing after you know that you have coronavirus, because you may get these tests, and it's just identifying the DNA. So it's not... It doesn't mean you're still infectious. It doesn't mean you still have it. Right? Usually by day 10, you should be good to go out in the world, but follow the recommendations of your doctor, follow the recommendations of your local government. Right? Some people are staying 14 days just to be sure. I stayed a month away from people because I was, really trying to err on the side of caution just in case. Being asymptomatic, I didn't know what it meant at that point, but the more research I did, the more I understand now why I was. So, Ayurveda's view on COVID-19. Ayurveda teaches that even if there's a virus or a bacteria, a human won't be infected in a way that manifests disease unless the doshas are vitiated. Okay, so if you're imbalanced, you will get sick. If you're very balanced, your immune system's going to fight it quick, and you're not going to get symptoms of being sick. Adler and Tripathi state that in the context of tuberculosis, that although there is no infection, this is just to sort of back up what I'm saying, disease can happen only if immunity is weakened. And in sepsis, which is deemed to happen not due to an infection, but only when the host mounts a dysregulated immune response. This is believed to be why the same virus is causing some to be asymptomatic, some to have mild symptoms, and a lesser percentage have severe disease commingled with predisposed comorbidities, right? So when those other factors are presenting themselves, right, if you have all these other issues that are making you more prone to having a very bad reaction to COVID, it's also an indication to an Ayurvedic practitioner that person is very imbalanced. They have some kind of imbalance in the tissues and the doshas. There's an underlying dosha imbalance. So the focus in preventing severe symptoms, or the hope, or the theory of the Ayurvedic practitioners to prevent, it doesn't mean it's going to keep you from catching it. All right, we want to try to do social distancing, wear a mask, all that stuff, but the other factors presenting themselves, and it is apparent in Ayurveda, is that the underlying doshic imbalance has to be dealt with. Okay, so we make sure before we're exposed that we've done what we need to do. Okay, let's go next. So what's interesting, this is sort of highly debated. I won't get into the debate here. But according to the current non-conclusive evidence, the origin of this pandemic is traced to 2 species, the bat and the pangolin. The bat's dosha is Vata, and the pangolin dosha is Vata Kapha. So what this means is that everyone's predisposed, right, to catching this virus because of what's going on in our environment. So there's an increased susceptibility in individuals, but especially individuals with an imbalance that is the same as where the virus developed in. So if you have a Vata imbalance or you have a Vata Kapha imbalance, it's more likely that you're going to have more severe symptoms for COVID. So if you if you sort of gear more towards a Pitta constitution and you're balanced in Pitta, you're going to be less likely to have symptoms. If you already have Vata, you're going to be more predisposed to have imbalances in Vata because it's already high in you, right? It's your constitution. Same with Vata Kapha or Kapha, right? So we want to, I want to talk through, if you do catch it, what the symptoms look like for each different constitution so you can figure out what's imbalanced and you can start sort of balancing that imbalance. Okay, the more knowledge you have, the more power you have in the circumstances that you find yourself in. So people who are indulging in Vata and Kapha provoking lifestyle are found to experience COVID more severely. Examples would be individuals in a Vata time of life, which is the elderly. Right, we heard the elderly are getting hit way harder. Those with COPD, hypertension, bronchial asthma, and immunocompromised people. Okay. So here are some symptoms according to dosha. Vata imbalance symptoms are going to be a fever, mild with rigors, dry mouth and throat, sneezing and watery nasal secretions, headache and body ache, sharp shooting pain, insomnia, constipation with hard stools. Feel free to screenshot it. The second is Vata Kapha. Mild fever with chills and rigors, excessive chills, cough with a lot of phlegm, productive sputum, frontal headache, the nose is blocked and running, pain throughout the body, generalized heaviness, a feeling of just you cannot get up. You feel so heavy inside, and excessive somnolence. So Kapha would be a mild fever with chills, a cough with thick and copious secretions, like Kapha cough. Their nose will be stuffed, blocked, dyspepsia, anorexia, vomiting, lassitude, heaviness, and excessive somnolence. There's a pattern it follows. In Ayurveda, we have the initial infection where patients seem fine. So these are usually the first 3 days. Seems like nothing's wrong. We feel totally fine, right? None of the doshas are doing anything. And then you have the initial stage where the illness starts setting in. So 3 to 7 days, Vata dries up Kapha, and you start getting cold-like symptoms. The second phase, now Pitta gets kicked in. COVID vitiates all the doshas. So it's going to sort of mess up all your doshas as you're trying to fight it. Pitta and the Shrota get involved now, and you start to get a fever. Okay, so a lot of people have low-grade fevers for a long time, and other people are spiking super high fevers, and that's when you have to go to the hospital. There are certain things to watch out for with your O2 level. Needs to be above 95 before you call your doctor and go to the hospital, so get an O2 meter. I have a shopping list I'm going to give you guys at the end. You want to also make sure that your fever is not going so high, but I'm giving you a list of Ayurvedic herbs that help to reduce fever naturally by dealing with the underlying problem underneath. So instead of like a fever reducer which take what your doctor tells you that you feel comfortable taking. I'm not making any medical recommendations. I just want to give information of what the Ayurvedic doctors are saying in India. So it reduces fever, some of these herbs, because it deals with the underlying dosha imbalance. And then the fever subsides. The third phase, if things are not resolved, you start going into crisis. Right? All the organs and the systems start having a hard time, a really hard time. And the fourth stage is you either recover or you pass away. So it sort of starts with mild illness, rhinitis, sore throat, bronchitis. It can develop into, when it gets worse and worse, it can develop into pneumonia, it can develop into severe pneumonia, it could develop into severe respiratory distress, and then sepsis, septic shock, and metabolic failure. So who is the most susceptible to catching it? People who have chronic lung disease or asthma, people who have serious heart conditions and heart failure, people with high blood pressure, people who are immunocompromised, people with severe obesity, people with diabetes, people with chronic kidney disease undergoing dialysis. A lot of this stuff is Kapha Vata problems. people with liver disease, people with vitiated vata and kapha. This just came out yesterday, which is why I'm including it. It's sort of what the Ayurvedic Doctors have been saying all along. This is from Dariush Mazafrain, who is a cardiologist and dean of the School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy at Tufts in Boston. And he told Medscape this in February 2020. It's a sad fact that this disease has been around for a whole year with millions dead and tens of millions hospitalized worldwide. And we haven't addressed the one of the major ways of preventing such severe outcomes. And this was in reference to, making sure that people are healthy to start off with, right? Trying to get people really balanced and healthy through diet and lifestyle and exercise. Applying the ancient to the modern. General preventative methods. Observe good hygiene, take a shower, brush your teeth, tongue scrape, oil pull, right? All those important things. Practice frequent hand washing with soap. Also put coconut oil or some kind of oil on afterwards so your hands don't bleed from excessive washing. I know when I was caring for the other sick people in my house because I didn't have any symptoms, I had to start wearing gloves to wash my hands, if that's a helpful tip. And then I would just, dispose of the gloves at the end of the night. And washing the gloves would kind of keep everything sanitary and it wouldn't make my hands so dry. So you want to follow respiratory etiquette. Cover your mouth when coughing or sneezing. Don't sneeze on people. It's very rude. Avoid close contact with people who are unwell or showing symptoms of illness, cough, runny nose, fever, breathing difficulty, rhinorrhea, headache, etc. Avoid contact with live animals and consumption of raw, undercooked meats. Avoid travel to farms or live animal markets where animals are slaughtered, especially the wet markets that the pangolins and the bats are in. Wear a mask if you have respiratory symptoms such as cough or runny nose. I know the masks are very controversial to some people. I have found that, I was wearing an N95 in the beginning. I was even teaching in my N95. I use a silk mask now. There are a lot of nice studies coming out that, the silk I definitely feel like it's easier to breathe in. It's more comfortable on my face. Maybe you want to wear that underneath another mask. But, when it comes to us, my brother-in-law was in the room with a mask. He didn't catch it. The rest of us did. So, it's pretty, it saves you some grief. So it's worth wearing your mask when you're out, if you can. Otherwise, people use face shields, which are also great. So find what works for you to keep you safe and others safe. Okay. Don'ts for prevention. Don't drink excessively cold food or drinks. Don't eat food that's excessively cold. Don't sit in an excessively cold air-conditioned room. Don't take in a high fiber diet that's fat-free. Don't fast or do weight loss regimens, right? Unless, in an unhealthy way. Fasting to lose weight is what they're saying. If you stop eating, it really provokes vata. You can lose weight in a healthy way where you're eating every day. Don't eat excessively spicy, bitter, or astringent foods. Try to avoid intermeal snacking. This will keep your digestion a lot healthier. In Ayurveda, they say try to avoid snacking. Avoid excessive tea, coffee, nicotine, and alcohol. These will all cause a bit of... So the caffeinated stuff is really provoking for vata. And then the, nicotine also can be provoking for vata in the lungs. Avoid heavy and excessively fatty foods. Avoid irregular meal timings. So that means try to eat your breakfast, your dinner, and your lunch at the same time every day at the appropriate time. Lunch around noon, breakfast, around 7:30 if you can wake up, and dinner before the sun sets. As soon as the sun sets, your digestion is going to be diminished. Don't excessively exercise. This means to an extreme. You should definitely exercise, but not to an extreme. It's better not to exercise when you're hungry. It's also better not to exercise right after you've eaten or right when you have to make a bowel movement. You should make the bowel movement. Avoid excessive sex. That increases vata. Sex is very vata provoking. Don't sleep during the day, which is kapha provoking. If you're waking up at night, that's vata provoking. So try to have a yoga nidra recording available to you. It'll make you fall right to sleep at the right time. And then at night, if you wake up, it helps you fall asleep too. Watch out for exposure to unseasonal weather. And allowing your mind to sort of ruminate in stress, right? That's going to really deplete your immune system. Easier said than done. Get into see a therapist, take your Rasayana herbs, meditate, asana will help to calm you down, read the text. The Vedic text is really helpful too. Just set your mind straight. The do's: timely meals, mindful eating, light diet, eating as per your appetite, balanced, moderate diet as per the season. Drink water that's been boiled beforehand and then cooled. That's going to be really good for you. You can drink water that's boiled with coriander seeds if you have a very hot constitution. I know that really calms down. I did that a lot during my pregnancy. It calms down the pitta, calms down the heat, the fire. You can drink water that's boiled with ginger if it's cold weather. Make sure you go to sleep on time and get enough rest. Really, really important for your immune system. You have some light exercise to half of one's capacity. Do pranayama, meditation, prayer. Have a relaxed mind. And observe dharma. Protect nature. Be kind. Practice compassion. Do your prayers. Do all the things you should be doing according to proper dharma, which you can learn more from your teachers in the texts. Okay. So, and then Rasayana herbs you can take, just take a little screenshot to help keep you healthy. Things like Haridra's turmeric, Papali's black pepper, Chyawanprash. We always have Chyawanprash in the morning at my house. It's a honey sugar-based jam that has a million Ayurvedic Rasayana herbs in it. It's so good for your immune system, and it's really good. Really high. It's made from amalaki amla berries, so it's very, very high in vitamin C and all kinds of other nutrients. It's like a Ayurvedic vitamin in the morning. So even my little kid has it too. Okay, treatment for active infection. I just want to mention the National Interdisciplinary Research and Development Task Force for Ayush, which is the Ayurvedic sort of overseer in India. Research in COVID-19 was constituted in India on April 2020 to streamline Ayush's COVID-19 response: Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. The primary rationale was that all Ayush interventions for COVID-19 should be rigorously built on robust research, for which systematic cooperation between Ayush and biomedical physicians and scientists is necessary. Clinical Trials Registry India lists 107 studies as of August 20th, 2020 on Ayurveda initiated by various institutions using the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Ayush. So it's a lot of what's influencing what I'm telling you here. So this is based on research. Research over thousands of years, but also now in reference to exactly COVID. Yep. Okay, so Western treatments and recommendations. If you catch it, what our doctors told us, what the pediatrician told us was just treat it like a regular cold, do what you need to do. And then I have an amazing general practitioner. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. We have been having very intense conversations all throughout this. He's been very up to date. So he tells his patients to take vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and to rest a lot, right? And then if you go to the hospital, they're treating it with, if you get a bad, they'll treat it with the steroids. They'll treat it with, the blood of people who have had COVID. They'll use their immunobodies to inject into you, and that's making people recover very quickly. They'll give antiparasitic drugs, antiviral drugs, antibiotics. In really bad cases, they're intubating. And then lying the patient on the belly was something that they found really helps. So if you're at home and you're not feeling well, you can lie on your belly. But always speak to your primary care physician in regard to your medical care, especially if you're going to be taking herbs. You want to make sure these are powerful herbs, Ayurvedic herbs. You don't want them to have some kind of counter reaction with something else that you're taking, or if you have a condition that it can cause trouble with. I want you to always check with your doctor before taking anything, undergoing any diet changes, or any herbal supplementation. So you can screenshot this. It's pretty similar to the path that Western doctors are taking, only it's an herb form. So we have Tulsi, which is a natural antibiotic. I know in the Bhakti tradition, we don't take in Tulsi. I didn't for a long time, but when it came to COVID, I just made sure I said a prayer to her. And I thanked her, and I asked her for her assistance before taking the tea. We have ginger, which is a digestive aid. Fresh ginger affects your throat. So if you're having throat problems, it's going to help with that. And dry ginger affects the belly. COVID is known to wreak havoc on the digestive system. Right, one of the first things that you might notice is diarrhea. All of a sudden, you have very loose stool. It's also good for keeping your Agni balanced and cleansing your bodily fluids, and it reduces kapha. So licorice, which has contraindications if you're taking medication or if you have high blood pressure, a couple of other things. So make sure you research what you're taking before you take it. But licorice is a natural steroid. They're giving regular steroids to people, and you may, want that from your doctor if that suits you and is right for you. But this is a natural steroid. It protects the mucous membranes. It supports your immune system. It reduces vata. Guduchi is antiviral. It's like what do they call it? They call it like the nectar. It's so good for you. It helps to reduce all the doshas that are out of control. Don't use that if you have hypoglycemia. It's something that they're recommending for COVID. Turmeric, which is just, they have books written on the benefits of turmeric. There's so many benefits to turmeric. And I was taking it because it was antiviral, anti-inflammatory. COVID has really creates a lot of inflammation. It's also an anticoagulant. Like if you're taking anticoagulant drugs, you can't take turmeric with it because it'll mess up the drugs. It's so powerful. So it's also better absorbed if you take it with black pepper, but for pitta constitutions, the black pepper may increase the heat. So you may not want to, just see how you feel with each of these things. But it is anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and yeah, it keeps the blood from clotting, because an issue people are having with COVID is the blood becoming very thick and blood clots. So if you take the turmeric, it should help in some capacity. And there are studies, I've cited everything at the end. I have such a huge citation page that I will show you if you want to just look into anything that I'm saying. So Dashamula is amazing. So turmeric Dashamula is cool to take if you are breastfeeding. The other ones, you have to really check about pregnancy, the current state of your pregnancy, how far along you are in your pregnancy before taking any kinds of herbs, just so you can make a mental note. But Dashamula reduces vata, very much so. It's also bronchodilator, so it's going to keep your lungs open. COVID tends to attack the lungs. And it helps to keep your airways clear. It's also antiviral, antipyretic, so it reduces fevers, right? There's a lot of good stuff with Dashamula. It will help affect your mood as well. They've done studies where it can have a similar effect to an antidepressant. It's just, it's very stressful going through COVID, and it's very stressful being in the world that we're living in. So if you need to kind of take the edge off this, and ashwagandha is another one that's recommended, will really help with that. Ashwagandha is also safe for postnatal. Haritaki is another good one, which is present in Triphala, which is the 3 super berries. Shatavari is a fever reducer that you can have on hand. It helps to reduce vata, one of the doshas that it helps to reduce. Amalaki, same. Helps to reduce vata. That's also going to be in your Chyavanprash. Pipali is heating. It reduces vata and kapha, which is what gets really high with this particular thing. And it also increases the effectiveness of all other drugs in modern medicines, and it interferes with your anticoagulant. So I would just double check everything before you incorporate that one into teas or any kind of supplement. Bunimba. And then Vedanga was, I had it in the house. It's an anti-parasitic that they recommend postpartum, just in case you or your baby are going through any kind of weird parasite infestation. So I just had it just in case. And I had read a study that they were using Vedanga in India, and my husband had been, he had this fever for, 3 weeks. It was pretty bad. He didn't want to take the herbs in the beginning, and, just watching like a day of no herbs, what a difference that made. We couldn't get his fever down with, anything. He was taking steroids. He was on steroids from the doctor. He was taking Tylenol or Motrin, and nothing was really working to get the fever down. And when I gave him, Vedanga is like the superhero that you send in when nothing else is working. And I didn't understand why until I spoke to my doctor about it, because they're using antiparasitics very successfully in, don't quote me on that. I don't want to get in trouble for saying that. But in some countries, they're finding that certain antiparasitics are helping. There are studies that back up what I'm saying. And I didn't understand, what is this, a parasite virus? It didn't make any sense. But he explained to me that it really boosts the T cells, which is what's like clobbering COVID. So once I gave him Vedanga, 3 days of it was immediate. The fever went down. And then after 3 days, he was completely fine. All the COVID symptoms were gone. So the only thing with Vedanga is it can really be very, very, very heating. It can cause loose stool. It kind of like has to blast through the cell wall. So I would just be taking that with Guduchi, with coriander. Take it with cooling things, and that should help to mitigate what might happen. But it reduces vata and kapha in particular. So it makes sense that it's battling COVID. Brahmi and Gotu-kola are also being used in some of the studies. It cleanses your neurons, which is very cool. I did about a month of Brahmi, not in the form of Gotu-kola, but it's sort of like sister in another part of India, which is Bacopa. It has a similar effect of cleansing the neurons. And you feel like your memory gets better. Elephants eat a lot of Gotu-kola leaves, and they joke that that's why their memories are so good. You get these swamis who are memorizing volumes and volumes and volumes of text, and they would use Brahmi to help them to remember things, and cleansing the neurons is part of it. And the neurons get a little tired dealing with COVID, so it might be helpful to have Brahmi in your cabinet just in case. Arjuna is another just in case one. So Vedanga is a just in case. Brahmi is a just in case. Arjuna is a just in case. Shatavari and Amalaki are just in case you get a fever. Right? Really, most of this page is just in case. Arjuna is a super herb that it's a bark of the Arjuna tree. And it cleans the channels of your heart. So if you're getting tightness in the chest, if you're getting some kind of pulmonary things, check with your doctor before you take that. That it's okay, most definitely. Chyavanprash is something you'd be taking every day. Zinc basma is something you should take every day. I was using SBA Ayurveda's brand, chandi.com, I think is their website. They make a zinc basma. You just drip a little bit in the water. It's easy to digest, right? The zinc pills that they give, that you buy at the pharmacy, are not easy to digest. They can wreak havoc on your digestion, and we know that we want the digestion to be really healthy at this time. So zinc basma is really easy to digest. It's not going to give you bad belly. Ashwagandha is something that everybody's recommended to take during COVID. If you have no contraindications to it, definitely check. It reduces vata. It helps to stabilize the mood. If you're really feeling up here, it'll bring you down. If you're really feeling down here, it'll bring you up, right? It brings you to an even space. And it also helps with fever. I think it's got a little sort of antibiotic going on there. It's very helpful with COVID. Okay, so general measures. This is sort of what we can do every day when we're in an active infection. I also have a list if you are dealing with an Ayurvedic practitioner and you need special formulations that they can understand and provide for you. Please email me, reach out, I'll send you the list. That's with dosing and all the different things. Okay, general measures. Make sure you're drinking warm water throughout the day. You have this very gentle yoga, pranayama. You're still doing pranayama throughout if you can, meditation. You want to be cooking with spices like turmeric, cumin, coriander, garlic. You want to take your Chyavanprash every day. Diabetics can take a sugar-free Chyavanprash. You want to drink herbal teas. Okay, so this is one recipe that you can have. Dashamula tea. You can add to your teas jaggery, which is a natural sugar. Make sure you don't heat your honey. Okay, if you're using honey, you don't want to put it in a hot teacup because heating honey actually turns it toxic, according to Ayurveda. You can put a little fresh lemon in too, if you need. Golden milk at the end of the night is really helpful. Tons of recipes online. You cook some turmeric, water, whatever spices and Rasayan herbs you want to use into the milk, and you drink it. You could drink it twice, or usually we take it before bed. We do a nasal application of Nasya oil. You can use sesame, coconut. I was using Bunyan's medicated brand. It had that gotu kola in it, which is great. Has some eucalyptus, some skullcap. That's all in it. You can even use ghee, which is great for everything. Do the nasya in the morning and the evening. Even ear oil. Bunyan makes nice ear oil. Just oiling everything. You oil pull in your mouth. So you take the oil and you swish it, and it helps to get excess bacteria out. It comes in through the nose, it proliferates in the nose, COVID, and then it starts to make its way down. Okay, so you have some time before it gets to the lungs. If you can get it, deal with it in your face. I had a friend from India who sent me, before, like just as everything was starting, a friend from Europe had sent him that they were making sure people gargled with hot water with salt and turmeric in it twice a day, drinking very hot fluids, and that's supposed to help. I was even doing neti pot because I was trying to wash it out of my face. That's more controversial. You have to decide what's right for you and speak to your Ayurvedic practitioner who knows your constitution best. Tongue scraping. You take your little tongue scraper out. It helps to get the ama, the leftover waste, out of your mouth so we don't reabsorb it. So these are things you can do every day. And then to consider for after you have COVID, so because this is so severe, there's such a high cytokine load that happens, and because of all these factors that we're dealing with in the environment, it can vitiate all three doshas when you catch it. It can really, really make you very imbalanced. All the 7 dhatus or tissues, all the ways that you get rid of waste product, get inhibited. It causes problems throughout your whole system. We get stagnation in the channels. And that fever, it's really rough on your system. And it depletes your Agni, your digestive fire. So there's a lot that can happen. We have these long haulers where it's such a mystery. They don't know why these people are still having all these symptoms, it's because all the doshas get messed up from COVID. So there has to be a healing period afterwards, that even if you are asymptomatic, you should be making sure that you address all the vitiated doshas after you have recovered. When it comes to death, I don't know if this is helpful to say, just in case I'm throwing it out there, they're saying that at day 7 is when Vata people are passing, at day 10 is Pitta people, and day 12 is Kapha. And it could relapse with a 1-day gap if the dosha is mild and the Agni is strong. So you may find that you're sick, and then you feel like you're getting better, and then you start having symptoms again. Okay, so just be mindful of what's going on and just stay in touch with your doctor. Because the Vata gets so high from COVID, people can feel, they're saying that people are getting psychological problems afterwards. And this is like Vata being so high. So we have to do things to make sure that we reduce Vata. You take a rest, you take baths, you do oil massage afterwards, medicated oils, take your Rasayana herbs that reduce Vata that were all listed here. Anxiety and depression is becoming a pretty common thing in long haulers, and it could be just because they feel so terrible, obviously, but it also is because of the Vata being so high. So that Dashamula and Ashwagandha reduce Vata. So you want to keep taking that. You want to take Gotu Kola and turmeric are anti-inflammatory and anticoagulant. And then you could even, if you need the licorice, you can keep the licorice. I was keeping things around in oil form. So I had turmeric oil I had made, and Brahmi oil and licorice oil. And we were using it on all of us because it just supersedes the digestion. If something was going on, then we could deal with it very quickly with the medicated oils. Keep taking vitamin D. Keep taking your Chyawanprash each morning. Some other things that are happening, people have headaches, they have trouble breathing after COVID's done, they have digestive issues. So you can refer back to the beginning of this workshop. If you have digestive issues, which digestive issue do you have? And then we can treat it that way. And again, you want to consult with your doctors. They can do full workups after COVID's over just to make sure everything is okay. You could do blood tests for elevated inflammatory markers. Here's a list of what you can test on. You might want to go see your cardiologist, just make sure your heart is okay after having COVID, and just getting a general blood workup to go through your regular, the regular stuff, but also how's the thyroid doing, how's the liver doing, how the kidneys doing. Check all your organs, make sure everything is copacetic. If you have questions, I am here for you. This is my passion. It's my seva. So feel free to shoot an email over. My contact is through my studio in New York. You can go to the website to get my contact information, revolution-yoga.com, or you can shoot me an email. We're very active on Instagram too, sharing stuff on Ayurveda. Feel free to follow us there. And we have lots of sources for this presentation. Feel free to explore them all. Feel free to share this information with people. It's not mine. I'm just passing it on from my teachers and from all the people doing this amazing work around this disease. I wish you peace and wellness and fortitude and the strength to carry on even when things are hard. Thank you so much for listening through to the end, and be well.